So when it comes to understanding the practice of yoga, there are 4 separate yogas that are described in the Vedic philosophy. They are, the first 3 are for each of the 3 components of the personality. So for the emotional component, we have the path of devotion. For the intellectual component, we have the path of knowledge. And for the physical component, we have the path of action. So for mind, intellect, and body, you have the path of devotion, knowledge, and action. So they are deployed anytime we are feeling, thinking, or acting. So these 3 will be deployed almost like medicine. Which one should I use? And in what ratio? Should I be mostly active? Should I be mostly intellectual? Should I be mostly devotional? That will depend entirely upon your specific temperament. So if a person is predominantly emotional in nature, then the primary yoga for them is bhakti yoga. If a person is predominantly intellectual in nature, jnana yoga, path of knowledge. If a person is relatively balanced in both, then karma yoga, action.
So is there the idea, though, that if someone is predominantly emotional, they should practice the other 2 to become more?
No. You're not looking to shift your basic temperament. You're looking to go with your nature. Go with the flow of your own nature. It's much, much easier. And use whatever nature you have. So if you're predominantly emotional, use that. But it is the case that nobody is completely emotional or completely intellectual. So there'll be a predominant component perhaps with one, and you'll use the other 2 in whichever ratio is appropriate. So if I'm 80% intellectual, 10% devotional, and 10% action-oriented, then 80% of my yoga practice is jnana yoga and 10% of the other 2. So this is why we say we use it like medicine, or use it like food. Actually, think of it, that might be a better way to think about it, nutrition, because you don't constantly take medicine every day. But you have a certain ratio of proteins, fats, carbohydrates, minerals, etc. Appropriate proportions according to whatever the body needs. So it is with the yogas. Whatever your personality type is, deploy them appropriately. So the 4th type of personality is neither predominantly intellectual, predominantly emotional, or balanced in both. The 4th type of personality is undeveloped in both emotion and intellect. It is pretty unlikely that you know anybody who fits into this category. They just have no emotional reaction to the world. There's no feeling for anything or anybody. No interest. What do you want to do? Meh, nothing. What do you like? Meh, nothing. There's also no thinking. There's no inquiring. It's a very insipid, dull, listless sort of existence. So like I say, very few people you'll come across who fit into this category. But for the purposes of rounding out the idea, for that person, the path of compulsion is prescribed. So what that means is that there is an external agent forcing them into some sort of compulsive and usually constraining activity. So the word, or the yoga for this one is hatha yoga, which I'm sure you're familiar with. So the word hatha also has other meanings. Like many of these Sanskrit words, they have a range of different interpretations and meanings. One of the interpretations or meanings of hatha is compulsion, the yoga of compulsion. And so the person is forced into physical disciplines that are rigorous and in some cases extreme. Why? Why would you force someone who's listless and unresponsive into an extreme, perhaps uncomfortable physical practice? Yeah, to wake them up. Why am I doing this? Aha, finally your intellect's asking a question. This sucks. Good, at least some emotions are coming up in your personality now. This is the idea that you force them into some sort of something, thank you. It forces something out of them. Once that has been elicited, then it can be directed. But if the mind and intellect themselves are not expressing or flowing, then you can't direct them in yoga. You can't direct a flow unless there is a flow.
Could it be that everyone is either just mind, intellectual, or body, but that certain circumstances make them be nothing, and then something makes them
for the person for whom Hatha Yoga is the only yoga that works, they'll always be in that state of sort of listlessness and unresponsiveness. I mean, they get up and feed themselves, and maybe they plod to work and click, but really there's nothing much going on inside. If a person is sometimes that way, but sometimes very active, and sometimes very dynamic, and sometimes very emotional, then that becomes their personality type. They're a mixture. A little bit, maybe 20% of the time I'm just dull, unresponsive. The word we use is tamasic, actually. I'm very tamasic at times. That's 20%. 40% of the time I'm highly active, and the rest of the time I'm completely emotional. Thinking doesn't really come into it much. Then that describes my personality type. So again, 20% Hatha Yoga, this much, this much, this much. So essentially the yoga that we are employing depends upon the ratio of mind to intellect. This is really the way that we think about it. So self-analysis essentially is the first step. Then we spend some time to think up and to pitch an ideal for our life as self-development. And then we spend some time exploring how the ideal of self-development will express itself in the different domains of life. And this practice becomes yoga. So what it means is that the three disciplines, and we're only going to stay with three, we're not going to do the other one, the three disciplines of karma, bhakti, and jnana yoga are integrated into all of the activities that we engage in life. It's not that we have, between 4 and 6 in the morning I'll do my jnana yoga, and then I'll do my karma yoga between 4 and 5 in the afternoon, I'll do my bhakti yoga just before bed. It doesn't work that way. Yoga is something that we strive to integrate into everything that we are doing, into every relationship that we're engaged in, into every pursuit that we are following. As you think, so you become. So if all throughout my day's activities, I am invoking and sustaining that ideal of self-development expressed through yoga, then there is a meteoric rise in my spiritual growth. If I do it sort of half-assed, piecemeal, a little bit here, a little bit there, then I can expect my growth to be commensurate with that. If I want to play an instrument and I practice once a week for an hour, how good do I get? Meh, not much. I don't really advance. I might get a little bit better, but then I'm not going to get any further. If I want to be a virtuoso, every day I have to practice for hours. Practice makes better. If I want to be a virtuoso when it comes to life, I have to practice consistently. Practice makes better. Once I get better, then I can meditate, and meditation makes perfect.